All right, I think maybe let's get started. So as usual, this meeting is being recorded and will be published. Participation in the meeting is in accordance with the LF antitrust policy as well as the open access code of conduct. This is the GUAC maintenance meeting. This is a weekly meeting that's open to all. So I think we can jump right into the agenda. First one's from Brand community meeting this Thursday. I guess let's maybe brainstorm a little bit on and look through what we'll talk about. So far we have the ladder climbs, the cubescape collector. Do we want to maybe talk a bit about the 1.0 stuff as well? Now that we have kind of at least like the technical side of it fleshed out, maybe get some feedback from the community on that.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
I think based also on the discussions today, we'll figure out whether we've come to we have something to share about the community development, or maybe just tell people that it's happening and ask them to chime in on the maintenance meeting. Any other topics to add on this? Any demos? Any new features? Everything are cool.
Yeah, I think Jeff's Cubescape stuff's really the only new work that's gone in a while.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Moving on, the next one is on status update on 1.0 messaging. Ben, you want to give a quick update on that?
Yeah, just there's not a lot to say. I just didn't want people to think I'd forgotten about it. I've been sort of working a couple of different parallel threads on that, from like a Kusari perspective, trying to understand, how we communicate the differentiation between GUAC and the Kusari commercial offering. It's like that's all been sort of like a big mass of different thought patterns. But it's conveniently timed to all work out well. So I'm hoping that by the end of this week, I'll have something that's concrete to share with everyone, and we can kind of get some feedback on, if my thoughts are correct and what we're missing and things like that.
Sounds good. I don't know why that happened. I heard myself muted, and I guess my screen is still sharing, but I close my window. So I can't seems like I can't share my screen down in here, even though I tried to do everything right. As kind of discussed, I added a description of what the technical aspects of the 1.0 would mean. Can someone help me just share that part of the document so we can quickly talk through it? Expand. I think if you go up or down, up, go up, further up, all the way up. Uh-huh. Yeah. So I think overall, this is just saying like, we're focusing on stability, usability, just like very basic foundation layer. Uh, the main things is basically I go through all the different components to say what's 1.0, what's not 1.0, what's supported, what's not, what's the backward compatibility guarantees that we have. So this talks about storage, saying that like Ant is the only stable backend that was supporting for 1.0. All the passes are stable. Ingestion support for PubSub and for Blob Store are based on the Go Cloud stuff. A lot of this probably needs a little bit of validation, or if you feel like this is over promise or under promise, please comment and make changes to it. If you go a little bit further down, we talk about the metadata ingestion, depth of depth OSP clearly defined. There was one going through the notes. There was one thing on certifiers which I wasn't sure whether we made the decision here, because I think like the OSV certifier still has a pretty compelling use case. So I'm not sure whether we got the decision point on this yet. So I wanted to check with everyone what our viewpoint on stability for certifiers and support 1.0 is here.
Yeah, I mean, OSV has been around for a long time, right? So it's been pretty stable. So I'd keep that one. And then I think there was an issue with the rate limit, which I think there was a PR for. But again, the clearly defined one's also been working fine. End of life hasn't been tested much, so I would keep that one under experimental though. I think that was a new one.
Okay. So we are okay with OSP and clearly defined certifiers support. I think other than that, the rest is just we already can go down. Collector stability, I think I call out here that only the file collector is considered stable. Everything else is subject to change. Use at your own risk. API stability, I mentioned that they're stable per major version. Reliability interface for query and accessing the data. But more caveats in the section below. REST API is not 1.0. CLI is still not 1.0. There's no guarantees that. I see my wording that's gonna be it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what looks like a word or two may have gotten deleted here.
I think I just want to say GUAC CLI does not have a stable interface for 1.0.
Okay.
I think initially I copied it from somewhere that said that like it's the main way to interface with something, but I think I kind of started writing that, but I was like, oh, but maybe like what we were saying 1.0 is the GraphQL is the main way to interact with GUAC, right? So it's like I think I was trying to word it as remains the main way to kind of like almost like a debugging interface, or like a power user interface. Yeah, maybe I just have to figure out how to word that. I had a note on deployment stability that this will just be based on the Kusari Helm charts. Instead of a statement that will be updated.
So on that note, and I think I might have had a little bit of this conversation with some of the folks at Kusari, but I don't think I've done it broadly. But I think this would be a good time to consider whether or not we should just donate those Helm charts to the project so that the maintainers can keep them updated as part of the release process and all of that. Right now, it's kind of awkward that we're kind of relying on that as a mechanism, but some of the maintainers don't have access to make changes and things like that. And as far as I know, Kusari is not using it internally directly. So
Yeah, no, I would recommend sort of contributing it, especially given that like it doesn't support Postgres yet. And so we should probably support, like, the Helm chart should probably be done to do some of that, because we've gotten a couple of bits of feedback of, hey, I use the Helm chart, but it's actually just the in-memory stuff. And so I can't actually, like, great, I want to run this in Kubernetes, but then it's like, oh, as soon as I restart this, everything's gone again. So again, I'm not saying that like I'm going to be doing the work for Postgres, but I think that by contributing it to it and saying, hey, great, what can we do to get somebody to contribute some of the work to get Postgres running would be good.
Sounds good. I think maybe let's also make this a requirement before we 1.0 as well. I feel like at least like the deployment with the Postgres. Unless we decide to just delete this whole deployment bit. Although I think we should have it. It sounds like a necessary quality of life to run it. Backward compatibility and versioning, I think basically I tried to encode what we talked about. Maybe just take a read through, and if there's any issue, just flag it up. But it should be encoding what we discussed last week, so I don't wanna, just read through it again. Jeff.
Yeah, so what are we trying to say above with the CLI, like that the flags might change and it's not stable? So we say, sorry, I mean, like, call it CLI as a tool or CLI as like the actual interface might change. Which one are we trying to say?
I think I'm.
Because the reason I ask is like, if it's just that we're saying the interface might change, maybe that's something we should say further down in this, versioning or compatibility. Or are we saying that we don't consider the tool itself its quality, 1.0 level?
I want to say that, like, that's not like the GUAC 1 CLI is kind of a thing where, if we find something cool or there is a feature that someone wants, or, we kind of like, it's a bit experimental in that sense. I think it's my thinking, where it's like a all powerful like debug tool all in one toolkit.
I mean,
And
because
in that sense, yeah.
yeah, like the file collector, which we're saying is stable, right? That's in the GUAC 1 CLI.
But it's not how the collector is run, right? I think you're supposed to run GUAC collect in that sense, It,
So you're saying that running file collector via GUAC 1, we don't want to say is stable via, but using GUAC collected is?
I think that's my initial, that was my impression, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I just want to get your intention. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think we might want to consider. Like, I think that would be that's reasonable. But we might want to consider calling some of the GUAC 1 stuff stable. But I guess it's a whole nother. So when we say CLI stability, then we should call out. Like, what we really probably mean here is GUAC, like the particular tools or binary stabilities of each tool. And the other tools are all stable, or at least the ones that we say are like the GraphQL server for Ent, right? Like I don't know how much we need to actually call that out since we're saying it's stable in general. If we want to say that we're going to be adding stuff, whether it's features or flags, I feel like we can call that out here in backward compatibility and versioning as a separate issue.
I guess would it be fair to say, I think my main worry was someone's gonna use a GUAC 1 CLI as part of their automation or a script.
Mhm.
And if that behavior changes, then they have to account for that.
Awesome.
But maybe I think what you're saying is maybe that's fine, where there are certain parts of GUAC 1 that I don't think would change in a way that's breaking to older versions. And that's something useful to have.
Right. And then, I don't see anything inherently not 1.0 level quality for like GUAC 1 collect files, for example. It's just maybe not the most recommended way we want things to work at a scale. There's like trade-offs to using GUAC 1 versus GUAC collect, right?
Yeah.
Or are we saying like maybe we want to take that away at some point? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, because like GUAC 1 CLI has interacts with a lot of things. So
Yeah, there's different parts to it, right?
do we want to specifically call out those parts, or do we just want to say
Well, so we're calling out the different collectors and certifiers. What would go into separately? So we could let that stand. Like we have the GUAC collect binary that contains both of those, and so we're saying some of those are stable, some of them are not. I think that could equally apply to GUAC 1.
okay. Let me expand on this, and then I will let me add more details of what's
Maybe under backwards compatibility and versioning, we want to say something like, the CLI, if we want, like the CLI should follow semantic versioning as well. This is the names of the commands and the flags. But we will potentially be adding experimental commands and flags, subcommands and flags, right? That are
Okay.
not supported by one, supported.
Yeah, I'll take a pass through all the different commands and maybe list out, and then we can review that.
Okay.
Does it sound good? Yeah. I think the last bit And then I think we may want to spend some time on the community discussions. Just like known issues and limitations. I think I specifically call out the collect sub and that we are deprecating it in the future. And so basically this is we're not going to use collect sub, and the advanced patch planning and other CLIs are not. I think this maybe will be deleted once we elaborate a little bit more on the GUAC 1 stability.
Well, I think we should also define what we mean by advanced patch planning, because that's not what that means is not immediately obvious to me.
That's right. Yeah, I think this should all clear up a little bit more when I go through basically every single GUAC 1 command and say what's what's 101 and what's not. And I think that should the enumeration should fill the gap. Okay, cool. I will take a run through this, make the changes, and have it ready for the community meeting to share if we're comfortable with that. Cool. Okay, I think the next big topic that we had talked about last week was about the GUAC community, such extending the community in OpenSSF with justification, justify, and kind of how we wanna talk about that. And I think I kind of tried to gather some thoughts of what I tried to kind of summarize what we talked about. Let me paste that here. So I think I tried to synthesize some of the discussions we had. I think this is what we talked about. But this is again just a starting point for us to start with. I think we talked about kind of evolving community, making it bigger, kind of addressing the problem, community focus on addressing the problem of the supply chain knowledge graph. I don't know whether that's that's the right way to scope it, but I think that we can discuss that further. I think we talked about the desire for like a long-term alignment on like the data models, the architecture, how we're doing things. So we don't establish like multiple tools that take totally different directions, and are not able to operate with each other. And then the last bit I think we talked about was more on more just like short-term tactical with regards to justification projects. We would kind of have GUAC, what GUAC is today, and justification projects as is, kind of aim at different users. But in the longer term, hopefully the convergence is towards similar data models and standards and all that. Michael.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I think if we were to take a sort of step back, um, I think the stuff that we've gotten pretty good feedback on is there is a need for better tooling around parsing, uh, I'm going to say collecting, parsing, ingesting supply chain metadata. And so when folks had kind of like, again, talked to us, I think the key bit here is having a generic data model around this that by generic, I don't mean completely generic, but I mean like something that can be used in multiple contexts is useful. Um, Again, I think the thing that we've, like to address the elephant in the room, I think the graph itself has proven to be a little less valuable for a lot of folks, where they're just more just like, hey, I want to have some ability to uh, I want to have some ability to um, understand what's in the supply chain. There's certain elements of the, obviously the graph or whatever, but for the most part, it's been more the like, I want to understand my S bombs and understand my scorecard information and understand my salsa. And that's sort of generic. Um, Separately, there's like a lot of other projects that are funnily enough, being like, I have no idea how I'm supposed to parse an S-bomb. And I'm like, really? Like, have you looked at what GUAC is doing then? And then they look at what GUAC is doing. And then often, because the GUAC data model doesn't necessarily do everything they need, they just kind of like copy paste some code and then sort of remake some of the stuff that we're doing. So I think there's some value in continuing sort of that piece. Um, and not just S bombs, but it could be salsa, it could be, scorecard information, whatever. Because again, when I think about like what the even though trustification and GUAC itself are currently separate users, I think generally there's a whole bunch of stuff that folks want to do, and that includes things like I have one SBOM and I want to analyze it and get information about, enrich it and whatever, right? There's bomb CTL, there's OSV scanner, there's those sorts of things. Oh, I have a handful of SBOMs. I want to compare the software between multiple versions or across multiple different pieces of software, right? Those are the two I would say primary use cases. And again, this is a lot of stuff that has come out of the past several years of us kind of doing this sort of stuff. And then there is kind of the longer term, like, hey, I want to do that across like years worth of data or across like, hundreds of projects, like much larger sorts of setups. Those are, I think, the kind of common sort of use cases I've found that folks are kind of looking for stuff for. And they're looking for it to be also, again, I think the key bit there being it to be consistent, right? The hey, I want to compare two S bombs doesn't look very different than I want to compare 200 S bombs, if that makes sense. And anyway, does that make sense?
Yeah, to me it does. Yeah.
Besides the two being the same as 200.
Well, so it can be.
I get what you mean. I get what you mean though. But...
Yeah, I just mean that like there shouldn't be if I'm comparing, okay, maybe it's 20 versus 200. Like,
yeah.
it's yes, comparing two can be like a diff. Comparing 20 is probably something a bit more complicated, but then comparing, 2000 should not be any more like conceptually complicated. Like obviously there should be maybe more stuff happening behind the scenes. And so when I look at like what we're kind of doing with trustification, what Red Hat is doing with trustification, some of the other things, and some of this actually was brought up at VulnCon as well last week, was what can we be it's funnily enough, a lot of folks kept asking the question of like, oh my gosh, I have all these S bombs and I don't know like what impacts one or multiple projects. And I'm like, well, there's dependency track, there's trustification, and there's GUAC. Like all of these projects kind of do these things. But I think the thing that folks are asking for is how do we make it simpler and simpler and simpler? Um, and I think the thing that we had discovered for a lot of what folks are asking for, you could do a lot of this in memory, right? I can ingest, spend 2 minutes scanning gigabytes upon gigabytes of S bombs and just dumping the vulnerability data to a file, right? There's nothing to sort of prevent that. But I think again, what can we do to be making those things simpler? I think is the gist of it. Because again, I don't want us to necessarily be tied into anything that we've done in the past in how we can kind of continue to move past 1.0, I guess is my final takeaway.
I guess I have want to get your opinion on. So I think you mentioned the three different segregations, right? The uh, individual S bombs across multiple S bombs, and then across like multiple more S bombs plus other types of metadata, right? I think when do you think that the first case versus the other two are distinct? But it does sound like there's some overlap, right? So I think the question I'm trying to get is like, do you think that like OSG scanner and bomb CTL should be part of this community as well, or do you think they're separate, they're distinct enough problems?
So I think they should be part of the community. Um, Again, like that's where like ideally for me, this is kind of like GUAC's like the core work that we've done that has been super valuable is I think more so than even like the data model, it's how do you think about supply chain? Um, and it just so happens that we've done stuff with a graph, we've done stuff with a bunch of other pieces, and we've done a lot of really cool sort of work there. I think the thing that we've discovered is now that we've done all this thinking, a lot of folks are like, what does it take for me to do that without needing to, like, the thing that we've heard multiple times has been if I have a handful of S bombs or one S bomb, I don't want to spin up a GUAC, right? Because that's a whole lot of work. I have 10,000 S bombs. Great. I am probably now have the resources to now spin up a GUAC. So when it comes to sort of like, again, also bomb CTL, like they have some stuff that I think is very much in the community of what we're doing. And then they have some stuff that's not, right? So some of the stuff that Bomb CTL wants to do, which is maybe not what GUAC originally intended, was how do I enrich an SBOM because I want to deliver this SBOM to another party, right? So it's almost like, their sort of use case that they're trying to solve in addition to I want to, understand my SBOM a little bit. It's more around I want to manipulate my SBOM because I am giving this SBOM to somebody else, right? So the answer could be I'm combining two SBOMs, I'm enriching it with some vulnerability metadata, which I recognize is generally not a best practice, but it's actually the thing I'm trying to communicate downstream is I have when I handed you this SBOM, these are the vulnerabilities we know about, and here are the vexes for those vulnerabilities. So that somebody who's consuming this doesn't have to go and ask that question themselves. And so there's like, anyway, there's something there about what is like GUAC is about, the GUAC and the GUAC community is all about collecting data about your supply chain to answer questions. And then there's other folks who are like, great, how do I sort of interact with that?
Yeah, I think like Ria's use case that she presented on the community meeting a few months ago kind of falls into that of like, I want to take an SBOM, augment it, and then have an SBOM as the output.
Yeah, it seems like S bombs are kind of being used as kind of the communication medium, right? Communication format, if anything. I know this is very true of some federal, US federal requirements that they're treating the SBOM as a communication medium for the vulnerability disclosure as well, like Mike mentioned. Agent.
So to continue on that topic, so we also discussing how to find a good home for also libraries that are important for different kind of things. So for example, in Rust, I'm certain in Go it's similar, like all these libraries for parsing SPDXs and OSVs and things like that are all over the place. So how to bring that to some kind of a community effort, because we all depend on that. So do you see that as well as a part of the like a mission of this new community to like keep that as well?
Yeah, so I think like one of the things I would, and I know we've run into a couple of issues in the past around like some of the GUAC stuff in GUAC right now, like GUAC the graph database is like very much better suited for like only if you're ingesting into GUAC, but I don't think it would be that much. Again, I'm not doing the work, or I'm not the expert here. But I think if there was ways for us to sort of separate some of that out into, yeah, like lib supply chain or I don't know, like something like that would be valuable. Because again, I think the thing, I would love, if we could integrate with Protobomb a bit more and some of these other things, which could provide some value there. Because again, I think you're right. I think the challenge is like when I think about the GUAC ontology, for me it's more like what are the conceptual data types that folks care about? And so it's like let's just assume, hey, software component, right? We know that that's kind of one of the key bits in what we're doing. Okay, so software component consists of these things that we as a community have all decided, and maybe again, like JSON schema, protobuf, some other sort of just not shackle, please. Just that sort of thing is maybe a way for us to sort of do that. Because then when folks are sort of building out stuff, hey, here's a bunch of libraries that kind of interoperate. We can even maybe use some of the upstream libraries from SPDX and CycloneDX, and then just say, here's again, like this was a lot of the early work we tried to do with GUAC a little bit, but I think there's maybe stuff we can continue to do to make it simpler and that sort of thing. Because I agree, because what I would love is, hey, trustification written in Rust, our stuff written in Go, but the way that the data types themselves, you'd be able to, let's say, throw data from the Go stuff into the Rust stuff without needing to do a ton of conversion, right? It should just be like, oh, we communicate it via a protobuf and the data should remain the same across the two of them. Or hey, we communicate it via JSON or any Toto address, I don't know, whatever. But that I think that would be super valuable, because then like the thing that folks are often asking for, this is a thing that in the OpenSSF we're pushing for really hard, is like that kind of Unix style piping of, I would love to be able to say, I ran this query in GUAC, pipe it into trustification essentially, right? And now you can get the other stuff, or vice versa, of I run bombctl to do a thing to then pipe it into GUAC, which then, and then kind of do that down the line. But with that, we need to kind of have some of those data types, I think. Anyway.
I a big plus one to that. Yeah, I think there's also the like the stuff with like Semver passing, like ecosystem specific, like how do I treat this version and stuff like that. I think that's a lot of different ways to do it. And there's probably like 10 different implementations there. But I think in that sense, I think it's also nice to have that data model or the specification to say like, here's what it all passes into, and here's a good way to pass it. And like, there's a risk of it becoming yet another library that does it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, I would say we should curate, not create. Like, so for example, as much as we can, right? Like, for example, there's a really good Rust Semver library that I've used myself. And again, that's not to say that like if it turns out there are things that are maybe missing from it, hey, let's work with upstream. If not, maybe we do take on, pulling that in, or like, the similar ones for Go, or what's the other one, like parsing Debian epoch stuff, and those sorts of things, right? There's a bunch of different libraries for different languages. I think for us, as much as we can, we should just like look at how other folks are doing it and try to follow like the best. And then, again, I think for me, it's more about the data types and some of those other things.
So yeah, completely agree. So I didn't mean like we should force or anything like that. What we see is that like all these libraries usually start as like individual efforts and are maintained for a while and then like get a little bit behind. So it's more of an effort like helping those efforts if they get stuck, bring them to the community and make sure that going forward there's more eyes on it and more interest into it than relying on a single person to maintain it for a next decade, right?
Yeah, I think that's valuable, right? Just like even having a registry of like, here's all the libraries that we know of. Here's like, we can discuss as a community and be like, yeah, I think this library is good. We can back that. We can be opinionated about it. Whenever we realize that there's discrepancies in them, we can be at least a central point. And maybe it's a good way to get the developers of all those libraries to come together in community to have those discussions as well. I like that. Yeah. What libraries? I think there's probably stuff like Samba and what are you thinking of a couple? Yeah.
So I just wanted to because we had a small audience last time, but I just wanted to repeat what we discussed and where we are. So basically, everybody at Red Hat is super on board to like join GUAC community. Everybody is like, and everybody would prefer to be like a one community, not just another random OpenSSF project, right? So what we left is to like discuss how we're gonna do it if our community is interested into that, but there was a notion it is. So just wanted to make sure that everybody knows where we are. So everybody's okay to do whatever. So like move everything to the GUAC organization, make a new organization. That's what I think we should figure out next. So how this will all evolve from like a one project to like a community with multiple projects working on the same topic and towards similar goal.
Yeah, on that end, yep, totally on board. I think the only thing we want to do, just given that it's the size of the contribution, is to bring in LF Legal just to do a quick IP check to make sure that there's nothing in there that would, again, it's just like making sure, hey, is everything Apache 2 licensed and yada yada that's in there. I don't think it should be an issue, but again, I think just bringing that in, and again, I don't, for me, I think we should, get together, talk about like bring in maybe a marketing person to understand the branding a little bit and make sure like how do we sort of do all the right stuff, because again, I don't care what we call it, but there is a community that will care about like names and stuff like that. But yeah, we can definitely.
I personally think that, like, GUAC has its brand, and it has been built over the past couple of years, right? So people know it. So yeah, I wouldn't give up that so easily, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with
Yeah.
that.
Oh no, I wasn't saying, I wasn't gonna say rename guac by any means, but I meant like, um what
Do
is
some
sort of
marketing
like,
on
what are all the names of the different components and how are we kind of tying it back into that broader
yeah,
ecosystem? That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would help to have like a census of like what exactly would be coming in and like kind of figure out the structure of it. It's like, the way I'm envisioning it is it basically becomes another focus area or two in sort of the existing, contributor ladder setup. That might not be a well-informed opinion, but I think we can, once we have that understanding of like, how many repositories, how many maintainers, how many contributors at different levels are involved. We can kind of figure out the structure, and then from there we can kind of figure out the naming and messaging and how we sort of do that. But I think we kind of have to know what the end state's going to look like before we figure those parts out.
Yeah, so I wasn't pushing in that direction. So I would just want to say, like, that's what people at Red Hat are completely okay with doing. So if you're gonna go that way, super. But also, like, thinking about all this that we discussed today, like, are there going to be more projects? So how are we gonna structure that? Is the GUACSec organization and is that an umbrella that we are I mean, we are totally fine with it. So just like figure out, like, the short term what we need to do, long term where we want to go, and then maybe define what are the next steps. Like, as you said, like, involve marketing people. I will get some people from our side, involve legal people from both sides, and start, like, picking boxes, right, to make things happen.
So I guess I think there's two sides. One, the legal end, maybe that can be a concurrent thread. But does it sound like we're ready to kind of like maybe for the next meeting we bring together some proposals of like what it could look like, and then we pick and choose and critique from there. Um, does that sound like we're ready to have the discussion, or basically have we talked about it enough that you think that we are mind melded on what we're expecting?
so I think that makes sense for trustification, but like, are the other tools, we talked about bomb CTL and stuff like that, are those maintainers willing to, like, is that something they want to do, come under one umbrella? So I think that's an open question still, right? So I think we can't have that discussion about other projects. I think trustification and Red Hat and everything is ready, right? So I think that's fine. But like, if you want to do this for the other tools, like bomb CTL, protobomb, maybe, I'm not sure. Like, does that make sense to be like? But do they want to be under it? I know their protobomb is also an open SSR project, so I don't know if that's like a conversation that the governing board needs to have, or the whoever else. Like, I don't know who decides. The maintainers decide who decides that. So maybe that.
Mike
Yeah, I don't
decides
know.
that.
Yeah, no, as a TAC member, I can help out with that. But I think regardless, I think the thing is, regardless of where it ends up landing, Protobomb and BombCTL have both expressed a desire to share code more and to sort of interoperate better. And the answer of, hey, does it make sense for us to build the data model kind of thing in the GUAC community and then you interoperate with the libraries and the data model? Absolutely. Whether or not it belongs inside of the GUACSec org or whatever, I think is a conversation for another time.
And I also think like, okay, yeah, we will start with work and justification. Just we don't have to think about immediately other folks, but just let the room. If like, is this like what we want to go with? Like, let room for other people to be able to join when the time comes, and maybe in that manner, like think about again messaging of like what we're trying to do. Like, okay, we are transforming WAC from a single project into like a kind of umbrella and a community to do these kind of things, starting with WAC and justifications and opening door for the futures.
Yeah, I think that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I
We
agree.
definitely want to take things one step at a time. You know, even if we do kind of ultimately want to get everything under one umbrella, we'll fail if we try and do it as one big step. So I think, you know, unifying GUAC and justification in some way is a great first step that kind of proves how we'll, you know, do it for other projects if it comes to that.
So I think I think we should do maybe some pre-work before the next meeting. Thoughts about if we put together a proposal or a couple of proposals of all the decision points that we may need to make and kind of just like go from there. I'd be happy to be involved with this. Who else wants to kind of like offline try and put that together?
Yeah, I mean, count me in from
Yeah, me
our
too.
side, obviously.
Okay, so I'll set another separate timeout for us to just like put something together and then we can discuss it. This week.
So I think only the next Monday is holiday in most places. I think,
Oh,
at least in Europe.
okay, we can do the following one.
Yeah, but let's start working on it this week and yeah.
Okay, I will set
I
up
mean,
some time.
I mean, even if I'm not there, if we agree on it offline, it's okay to go forward.
Okay, and it sounds like, do we want to have that meeting next week? Any thoughts on?
I say we wait until everyone can be here. So maybe do it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I
like,
mean, but
you know-
do we want to cancel the meeting next week for
Oh,
other discussions?
I mean, I guess most of us are going to be in the office, I think. So it's probably worth
Let's keep
keeping the regular
Yeah.
maintainers meeting.
Okay, yeah, we'll just keep this topic for. I think there's still a bit of one old stuff that we can go through.
Yeah, so let's see how it goes. I don't have any travel plans. If you make everything, I can join the meeting even if you know, so it's not a problem. So yeah, well, let's plan for it. Yeah.
I mean, don't feel pressure to to spend your holiday to go
No worries,
chat
no
with us.
worries.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, sounds good. We only have 2 minutes left, but I wanted to hear about KubeCon stuff, but maybe we can talk about that during the community meeting. Yeah. Awesome. I think that's it. Anyone else got anything?